I'm 38 years old, a mother of two, and until recently, I thought the hardest part of my marriage had already passed. I was wrong. As I sat across from Derek, the man I had once built a life with, the courtroom air felt thick, like it hadn't been aired out in days. The oak table between us might as well have been the Grand Canyon. He sat with perfect posture, his tailored suit crisp, his expression unreadable. But his eyes, those cold, self-satisfied eyes, told me everything. He had already moved on. 13 years. That's how long we had been married. Long enough to have two beautiful children, Ethan and Lily. Long enough for me to have given up promotions, opportunities, vacations, and peace of mind just to keep our family together. And now it was ending in a room full of strangers with a judge who had no idea what it cost me to be here. Derek didn't look at me once. He leaned back, arms crossed, exuding smug confidence like he was winning a game no one else was playing. I couldn't stop staring. He looked like a stranger wrapped in familiar skin. I remembered his face when we brought Ethan home for the first time, how he cried holding his tiny son. I remembered the way he used to bring me coffee on rainy mornings. All of that felt like a story someone else had lived. And now he was walking away. For Camille, of course. Camille with her endless charm and sleek confidence. The woman who had shown up to soccer games acting like she belonged. The woman who now stood quietly behind Derek in the courtroom, her perfectly styled hair not moving an inch. I could feel the judgment around me. Derek's lawyer whispered something, and he smirked. That smirk cut deeper than the cheating, the lies, the months of gaslighting. That smirk said, I won. My lawyer, Donna, leaned in. You okay? She whispered. I nodded, but my throat felt tight. I couldn't unravel. Not here. Not with Derek watching, waiting. The judge called the room to order and began to read through the settlement. Custody of the minor children, Ethan and Lily Taylor, is awarded to Ms. Monica Taylor. Mr. Derek Taylor will provide child support as outlined in the agreement. The words landed like a dull thud. Technically, I had won custody. Technically, I was walking away with the children. But all I felt was the weight of everything I'd lost years of trying to save something that had already died. I glanced at Derek's hands. The same hands that had held my babies when they were sick, that once stroked my hair when I couldn't sleep. Now they sat still, unfeeling, detached. Monica, Dana murmured again. It's done. I nodded. It should have been over. It should have ended there. But it didn't. Because just as the judge prepared to adjourn, Derek leaned forward and said, Your Honor, there's one more thing. And that's when everything changed. The room shifted. The judge paused, his hand hovering over the gavel. One more thing, Mr. Taylor, he asked, adjusting his glasses. Derek straightened, his voice calm and disturbingly casual. Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to request the return of certain gifts I gave Monica during our marriage. Jewelry, designer handbags, a crystal vase. They're of significant value. I blinked. Was he serious? The judge raised an eyebrow. Gifts? Derek nodded. Yes. For example, the emerald necklace I gave her after Ethan was born. The diamond earrings from Paris. The silver bracelet she wore to all those charity events. I'd like them back. A low murmur spread through the courtroom. Even Dana sat straighter, her pen frozen above her notepad. This is absurd, she hissed under her breath. He can't legally do this without a separate hearing. Don't respond yet. But I couldn't look away from Derek. He sat there like he was reading from a shopping list, itemizing fragments of our life together. Each gift he named wasn't just jewelry, it was a moment, a memory, a story I had lived. Behind him, Camille shifted, her eyes sparkling with something between excitement and malice. This wasn't just Derek's idea. She was pulling the strings. The judge rubbed his forehead. Mr. Taylor, gifts given during a marriage are generally considered the recipient's property. If you wish to pursue this, it must be done through a separate civil proceeding. This courtroom is not the place. Dana nodded sharply. Exactly. We reject this demand outright. It's petty and inappropriate. But I held up a hand. No, I said softly. Dana turned to me, startled. Monica, don't. I stood. I'll return them, I said. The judge looked surprised. Ms. Taylor, you are under no legal obligation to. I know, but I'll return every last item. For a moment there was total silence. Even Camille's smirk faltered. I'm done holding on to things that don't matter anymore, I continued. My voice shook a little, but I held my ground. Let him have his necklaces, his earrings, the bracelets. Let him count his losses in carrots and handbags. I'm keeping what matters, my children and my dignity. Derek blinked. He hadn't expected this. He wanted drama, tears, rage, but I had nothing left to give him, not even that satisfaction. The judge, clearly tired of the circus, nodded slowly. If you're certain, Ms. Taylor, the court will note your agreement to return the items. You may coordinate the details privately. Dana leaned in, whispering urgently, Monica, this is just cruelty. You don't have to do this. I met her eyes. I know, but I'm not fighting over scraps. He can have his trophies. I'm walking out with my head high. Then Derek, emboldened, pushed one step further. And I'd also like the return of any gifts I gave the kids, if they cost more than $50. The room gasped. And my heart broke in half. The judge's face tightened, his jaw working as if chewing on disbelief. Mr. Taylor, he said slowly, are you telling this court you want to reclaim gifts you gave to your children? Derek didn't flinch. Yes, Your Honor, I gave them things, expensive things. A telescope for Ethan. A music box for Lily. If they cost more than $50, I want them returned. They were bought with my money. Dana was on her feet before the judge could speak. This is outrageous. These are gifts to minor children. There is no precedent, no legal standing. This is harassment. Derek cut her off. I'm entitled to what's mine. He sounded proud of it. Proud of reducing his children's joy to receipts. Camille stood beside him now, arms folded, her mouth curved into a satisfied smile. I looked at her and saw it clearly. This wasn't about property. This was a performance, a humiliation, a show of power. I could feel my breath catching, but I forced myself to stay still. I wouldn't let them see me crumble. The judge raised a hand. I've already stated that this is not the forum for such demands, Mr. Taylor. If you wish to pursue this, you'll need separate documentation, valuation, and appropriate filing. I strongly advise you to reconsider this course of action. Derek didn't budge. He thought this was his win. But the courtroom had gone silent in a new way. Not shocked silence, disgusted silence. The kind that comes when people witness something shameful. I stood again. The weight of what I was about to say pressed on my chest like a stone. It's fine, I said, my voice level. He can have them. All of it. The jewelry, the handbags, the telescope, the music box, the books, the toys. If it costs more than $50, it's his. Dana stared at me speechless. Even the judge looked stunned. Derek blinked. You're serious? I nodded. Completely. I'll box it all up. I turned slightly and looked at Camille. Her eyes lit up as if she was mentally cataloging the loot. She looked victorious. But Derek shifted in his seat. His confidence wavered. This wasn't what he had expected. He wanted a fight. He wanted to drag me into the dirt. But I was walking away untouched. Ms. Taylor, the judge said again, I must emphasize you're not required to do this. I met his eyes. I understand, Your Honor. I'm choosing to. Because I had finally understood something, Derek and Camille were desperate to feel important. They needed these items to validate their choices, their relationship, their fragile egos. But I didn't. Let them count their worth in necklaces and toys. I knew mine was in how I walked away with grace, not bitterness. The judge sighed. Very well. The court acknowledges your decision. This matter is concluded. As I sat down, the courtroom felt colder. But I felt lighter. I had just handed them their version of victory, and somehow I had won. The following week was a quiet storm inside my house. Each day, while Ethan and Lily were at school, I moved from room to room, sorting through the past. The boxes I gathered weren't just filled with items, they were filled with memories, some tender, some painful, all of them heavy in ways I hadn't anticipated. I started with the jewelry. The emerald necklace Derek gave me after Ethan's birth. I had worn it the night we brought him home, standing over his crib, whispering promises about the kind of parents we'd be. That necklace had been a symbol of hope then. Now, it lay still in its velvet case, just metal and stone, nothing more. The diamond earrings came next. He'd bought them in Paris on our 10th anniversary, during a trip that felt more like a truce than a celebration. I remember crying alone in the hotel bathroom that night, while Derek made calls for work. I wore those earrings at every event after that, trying to pretend everything was fine. I wrapped them in tissue and placed them into the box. Then came the silver bracelet. My favorite. Simple, elegant, strong. I had worn it to charity galas, parent-teacher nights, job interviews, any moment when I needed to feel grounded, collected. Now it went into the box like everything else. I didn't rush. I didn't cry either. I worked quietly, deliberately, treating each object with care, not because I wanted to preserve them, but because they deserved a final moment of recognition before being exiled from my life. By Thursday, the boxes of my own belongings were sealed and stacked neatly in the living room. That should have been the end. But then came the hardest part. I walked into Ethan's room. The telescope stood by the window, still pointed at the stars. Derek had given it to him for Christmas when he was 10. I remember how they used to sit up late, naming constellations together. Ethan had loved those nights. He had believed his father hung the moon. Now I was dismantling that memory, piece by piece. I wrapped the telescope in bubble wrap and placed it in the box. Then came the book's leather-bound astronomy volumes with Derek's handwriting in the margins and Ethan's notes beside them. I boxed them carefully, my fingers trembling. Lily's room was even worse. It still smelled like lavender and strawberry shampoo. I knelt beside her bed and opened the music box Derek had given her for her 8th birthday. It played the same soft melody she'd fallen asleep to every night. Her little fingers used to trace the carved roses on the lid like they were sacred. I closed the lid gently, fighting the lump in my throat. Next came her charm bracelet, with tiny ballet slippers and stars. Derek had bought it during a weekend trip we took when things were briefly better. I found her stuffed unicorn too. He'd won it for her at a fair. That one went into the box as well. Each item felt like I was betraying them, like I was trading pieces of their innocence for the sake of pride. But deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't about stuff. It was about not letting Derek and Camille drag me through more emotional warfare, about cutting ties clean, about making space for new memories not soaked in manipulation. On Friday evening, I stepped back and looked at the stacked boxes in the living room. 5 of them. 1 for the jewelry, 1 for the designer things, 1 for Ethan, 1 for Lily, and 1 for everything else. They sat there like tombstones. I sat on the couch, exhausted, not from the labor but from the weight of letting go. My body was tired, but my heart was still standing. I could still hear Derek's voice in the courtroom, demanding things like they were trophies. And I remembered the way Camille looked at me, hungry to win. But they hadn't won. They had to ask for these things because they had nothing else. I was giving them what they wanted, and in doing so, I was freeing myself. Let them decorate their new life with relics of the one they destroyed. I had children to protect, a home to rebuild, and peace to claim. That was the real victory. The plan was to finish before they got home. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could shield them from the ugliness just this once. But that evening, as I was labeling the last box with permanent marker, I heard the front door open. "Mom, you home?" Ethan's voice echoed down the hallway. I quickly wiped my eyes and stood. "In here, sweetheart," I called out. Ethan and Lily walked into the living room, still in their school uniforms, backpacks sliding off their shoulders. They froze when they saw the boxes neatly stacked, labeled in thick black ink. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Are we moving?" "No, honey," I said gently. "We're not moving." Lily stepped closer, her voice quiet. "Then, what's all this?" I knelt beside them, taking Lily's hand in mine while looking up at Ethan. "These are things your dad asked for back." "What kind of things?" Ethan asked, his jaw already tightening. "Gifts," I said, choosing my words carefully. "Things he gave me. Things he gave you." Lily's brows furrowed. "Like my music box?" I hesitated. "Yes." Ethan's face turned red. "He wants that back." "That's mine." I nodded. "I know, baby." "That telescope too." His voice cracked, and my heart ached. "That was from him. He said it was special." "It was," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It still is. But he asked for it. And I decided not to fight him." Ethan turned away, pacing the edge of the rug. "He doesn't even care about us anymore. He just wants to hurt you." "I know," I whispered. Lily hugged me tightly, burying her face into my shoulder. "I don't want him to take my things," she mumbled. "I don't want him to either," I said, stroking her hair. "But things are just things." What your dad gave you doesn't define who you are. What matters more is what we do next. Ethan stopped pacing. So what do we do? I stood, taking both their hands in mine. We rebuild. We start fresh. We keep the memories, not the objects. And we move forward. Ethan didn't speak, but I saw something soften in his eyes. Lily nodded, still holding my hand tightly. I knew I couldn't protect them from everything, but I could show them what strength looked like, what grace looked like. I could show them how to let go of what no longer serves you and still stand tall. Because in the end, this wasn't about the telescope or the music box. It was about choosing peace over bitterness. And I wanted to teach them that lesson for the rest of their lives. The next morning, I loaded the boxes into the trunk of my car. No tears, no hesitation. Just methodical movement, one box at a time. Each one carefully taped, labeled, and sealed. I didn't even listen to music on the drive. I wanted silence. I needed clarity. I pulled up outside the law office representing Derek. A receptionist greeted me at the front desk, cheerful and clueless. "Delivery for Mr. Taylor," I said, pointing toward the boxes. She blinked. "Do you need a signature?" "No, just make sure he gets them." Before I turned to leave, I saw Camille through the glass wall of the conference room. She was sitting beside Derek, flipping through papers. When she spotted me, her mouth curled into that same smug smile she wore in court. But when I didn't flinch, when I offered her nothing, not even a glance of resentment, her expression faltered. Just for a second. Derek looked up too. He stood halfway, maybe expecting me to say something, maybe even expecting a scene. I simply nodded once. "It's all there." He opened his mouth to respond, but I turned away. My heels clicked against the tile floor as I walked out. Outside, the air was crisp. I leaned against my car and let myself breathe, deep and slow. Not because I was sad, but because I had just done the one thing Derek could never understand. I let go. Not in bitterness, not in defeat, but with intention. He had spent weeks trying to take things from me, material things, memories, symbols of a life he walked away from. And in the end, I gave it all back because I had already outgrown it. He didn't break me. He just made room for everything better to come. Life didn't snap back to normal after that day. It reshaped itself, slowly and quietly. I spent the first few weeks focused on stability, small things. Cooking dinner without that knot in my stomach. Laughing with Ethan and Lily over cereal and cartoons. Rearranging the living room just because I could. Freedom didn't arrive with fanfare, it arrived in breath, in space, in silence, finally free of judgment. I started therapy, not just for me, but for the kids too. At first, Ethan was angry. He didn't talk much, didn't want to go. But one afternoon, after a long silence in the car, he finally said, "I don't get why he did it, why he wants our stuff." I looked at him in the rearview mirror and answered honestly, because he's still trying to prove he didn't lose. Ethan nodded. That made sense to him. Lily, in her own quiet way, bounced back faster. Children are incredible like that. One day she came home from school with a drawing our little family under a rainbow, with the words, "Mom makes us safe." That drawing now sits in a frame by the front door. I took on freelance interior design work, just one small project, at first a friend's guest room, then a nursery for a new mom. Word spread, and within 6 months, I had enough clients to turn it into a part-time business. I hadn't felt that kind of creative joy in years. One afternoon, I bought Ethan a new telescope. Not out of guilt, but because he'd earned it, aced his science project, and wanted to keep learning. Lily got a new charm bracelet too, just plastic and playful, but she lit up when she opened it. It wasn't about replacing what was taken. It was about showing them that no one gets to take joy from you without your permission. Derek never followed up. He got his things, but I don't think he ever really got what he wanted. Camille probably gloated for a while, parroting those bags and baubles like trophies. But I stopped thinking about her. About them. Because that was the true win, when they no longer lived rent-free in my head. I told my kids something I hope they never forget. We are not what we own. We are what we give, what we choose to rise from, and what we choose to leave behind. And as I watched them grow stronger, laugh louder, and love without fear, I knew. I didn't lose anything that day in court. I reclaimed everything that ever mattered. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't screaming or fighting. It's smiling, rebuilding, and making sure your peace is louder than their pride. Some people believe revenge is loud, explosive, public, unforgettable. But sometimes, the most powerful revenge is quiet. It's not in what you take back. It's in what you choose to let go of. When Derek demanded I return every gift, even the ones he gave our children, he thought he was stripping me of something valuable. But all he really did was reveal how small he'd become, and how far I'd come. The jewelry, the handbags, the telescope, the music box, they were never the point. I gave him back every item he could name, and walked away with everything he could never understand. My self-worth. My peace. My children. My strength. So, if you've ever been in a situation where someone tried to diminish your worth by taking things, by controlling you, by reducing your life to objects, remember this. You are not what they gave you. You are what you rise from. And that rise is the most beautiful revenge of all. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever let go of something toxic to reclaim yourself, leave a comment. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that remind us